American Republican Party convention is going on in Milwaukee. Thousands of people are participating in it. Good morning. Welcome to Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Budnam. I am thankful to all international news resources and my team. I am also thankful to all American, European, Canadian, Australian, Asian, African channels and AP, AFP and Reuters news agencies. Now watch the channels. Headlines. Donald Trump is receiving support from all his rivals of Republican Party. He is still wearing a bandage on his right ear. Supporters are very enthusiastic. French Prime Minister resigned. Construction mafia in Australia. King Charles delivered a speech today. U.S. Senator Menendez convicted in New Jersey. Severe weather is hitting half of the United States. That includes heat and rain. Chicago hit by storm. Iran and Trump assassination attempt. Israel is continuing bombing on Gaza, killing at least 67 people in last 48 hours. Bolivia new gas reserves. Gambia law of female genital removal. On Wall Street, Dow Jones Industrial, S&P 500 and Nasdaq all went up. Now watch the channels.
Good evening, I'm Amna Nawaz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. On the NewsHour tonight, here at the Republican National Convention, conservatives try to walk a fine line, firing up voters calling for unity in the wake of the assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump.
Judy Woodruff takes a closer look at that assassination attempt from an historical perspective.
There is a very long tradition of political violence and violence inside our public life.
And Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey is convicted of bribery and acting as a foreign agent. We explore the implications for the Democratic Party.
President Donald Trump's first public appearance since he was nearly killed. Lisa Desjardins is on the convention floor with a closer look at the stirring start to the week here in Milwaukee.
It was quite a dramatic moment last night, of course, when the former president arrived here. He now joins his newly minted vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance. And I'll show you guys, as predicted, here are the first Trump-Vance signs. All of this is part of one message, that this is a strong and confident Republican Party.
Please welcome the next president of the United States.
A grand entrance and triumphant return. The GOP's nominee for a third time, Donald Trump, appeared on the first night of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, walking into his family box at the Fiserv Forum to thunderous applause. It was his first public appearance since the attempt on his life. A white bandage on his right ear, a vivid reminder of how close an assassination attempt came. The crowd chanted, "Fight," the same word Trump mouthed while being rushed off stage 3 days ago. It was also the first public appearance of the new Republican ticket, as Trump stood with his new running mate, 39-year-old Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, the youngest vice presidential nominee in a generation. He's barely served 2 years in elected office. His life is changed now. A security detail walked with him and his family on a morning trip to Walgreens. By afternoon, he was standing in the spot where he will speak for the Trump-Vance ticket tomorrow.
And let's turn our focus now to some news impacting the Democratic Party today. New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez has been found guilty on all counts in a federal corruption trial. The prominent Democrat was accused of abuse of power and enriching himself and associates.
And just minutes after the verdict was delivered, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer again called for his fellow Democrat to step down immediately. William Brangham has the latest back in Washington.
Menendez was convicted on 16 counts, including...
Well, it's been a brutal summer for severe weather across nearly every part of the United States.
And last night, the Midwest bore the brunt of it. For details, we turn now to Stephanie Sy with that and the day's other headlines. Stephanie?
Thanks, Jeff and Amna. The Midwest was dealt a deadly combination of heavy rains and tornadoes overnight. The storms knocked out power for hundreds of thousands of people across the state of Illinois. In Nashville, in southern Illinois, cars were partially submerged amid flash flooding after reports of dam failures in the area. Damage was also widespread in the Chicago area, where tree trunks fell on cars and crashed through rooftops. A 44-year-old woman was killed after a tree fell on her home. Others scrambled for shelter to avoid the danger.
We kind of heard a gust of wind that came up quick, and my uncle decided that we all go in the basement, and as we went in the basement, we heard the big thump and the tree fall on the house. And I've never seen that before, like a tree it just came out of the whole root came out of the ground.
Meanwhile, just under 100,000 Texans are still waiting for power to be restored, more than a week since Hurricane Beryl made landfall there. Today, a group of Houston area restaurants filed a $100 million lawsuit against CenterPoint Energy over its response to the storm. In the Middle East, Israeli airstrikes across south and central Gaza killed more than 60 Palestinians overnight and through today. The deadliest attack hit near a refugee camp in the southern city of Khan Yunis. Hospital officials say 17 people were killed. The area is considered a humanitarian safe zone, where the Israeli military has told Palestinians to seek shelter to avoid the fighting elsewhere. Today, the State Department said Israel still has to protect civilians while targeting Hamas.
We have had extraordinary concerns about civilian casualties for some time. And that's why we are pushing so hard, not just pushing, but actively negotiating to get a ceasefire that would stop this daily tragedy where you see innocent Palestinian civilians being killed as a result of this war.
Meantime, the Israeli military says it has eliminated half of the leadership of Hamas's military wing, and roughly 14,000 fighters have been either killed or captured. Gaza health officials say more than 38,000 people have died in the territory since the war began last October. Former media entrepreneur Carlos Watson was convicted today in a financial conspiracy case involving his company, Aussie Media. A jury found Watson guilty on all 3 charges against him. Prosecutors alleged that he lied to investors about the financial health of his now defunct company. Watson started Aussie in 2013 and was a frequent contributor on cable news programs and other outlets, including PBS NewsHour. Prosecutors say he could face up to 29 years in prison. Watson had pleaded not guilty. Also today, former CIA analyst Sue Mi Terry has been indicted for allegedly acting as an agent of South Korea's government. The indictment says she began doing so in 2013, 5 years after leaving the CIA. This included advocating South Korea's policy positions and disclosing non-public information to South Korean intelligence officers. Like Watson, Terry was a frequent TV analyst who also has appeared on PBS NewsHour. On Wall Street, the Dow surged to a new all-time high after retail sales data provided new hope that the Fed will soon cut interest rates. The benchmark index jumped more than 700 points, closing near the 41,000-point level. The Nasdaq had a quieter day, but still ended higher, adding 36 points. The S&P 500 also posted gains. And country star Ingrid Andress has admitted she was drunk during her performance of the national anthem at last night's Home Run Derby. The 4-time Grammy nominee says she's checking herself into a facility to, quote, get the help I need. In an Instagram post, Andress expressed her remorse, saying, that was not me last night. I apologize to MLB, all the fans, and this country I love so much. Clips of the uneven performance quickly radiated across social media, drawing widespread criticism. The 32-year-old is known for country hits like More Hearts Than Mine and Wishful Drinking. And Amna and Jeff, back to you in Milwaukee.
Thank you, Stephanie. The assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump immediately sent shockwaves across the nation and through an...
Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. We're breaking with convention. War, peace, and the presidency. I'm Amy Goodman. We're broadcasting from Milwaukee. Donald Trump has selected freshman Ohio Senator J.D. Vance as his running mate. Republicans celebrated the decision while Democrats warned against Vance's extremist views, with President Biden labeling him a clone of Trump. The heeded his earlier call on Sunday to cool down the political rhetoric. The head of UNRWA, the UN's Palestinian Refugee Agency, said its Gaza headquarters has been, quote, flattened and turned into a battlefield, unquote, as Israeli forces continue their scorched earth campaign in Gaza City. Israeli attacks are also continuing throughout the Gaza Strip, including in Deir al-Balah, where survivors search through rubble for their loved ones after fresh airstrikes brought down at least one building Monday. Ukraine, Gaza, and many other topics at democracynow.org. In El Salvador, children have been subjected to serious human rights violations under President Nayib Bukele's violent crackdown on gangs. That's according to Human Rights Watch, which has just released a report detailing the arbitrary detention, torture, and other forms of abuse against children who've been arrested during El Salvador's state of exception that's been in force since March 2022. The report says detained children are held in overcrowded prisons, are not provided adequate food or health care, and have been denied access to their lawyers and visits with family members. Many have been convicted in unfair trials without due process. And in New York, a coalition of immigration and civil rights groups has filed a complaint of this. And in New York, a coalition of immigration and civil rights groups has filed a complaint on behalf of immigrants detained at the Buffalo Federal Detention Facility over chronic abuse there. The complaint accuses Immigration and Customs Enforcement of engaging in a brutal retaliation campaign against detained people who protect confinement. Meanwhile, in New York, a federal judge Friday dismissed Rudy Giuliani's bankruptcy protection case, clearing the way for creditors to potentially seize his assets. Giuliani had sought bankruptcy, quote. Bolivia's president has announced plans to exploit a vast natural gas reserve north of Bolivia's administrative capital, La Paz. President Luis Arce said Monday the discovery of 1.7 trillion cubic feet of gas would once again make Bolivia a major exporter of fossil fuels.
It will mark the beginning of a new chapter for the northern sub-Andean region. It offers the hope of maintaining our country as an important gas exporter, driving a second era of hydrocarbon production, and positioning La Paz as a department that is now a hydrocarbon producer.
Bolivia is already South America's largest exporter of natural gas, although its shipments are dwarfed by the world leader, the United States. Scorching temperatures continue to bake large swaths of the Midwest and eastern U.S. as a heat dome blankets the region. Some habitable, from driving ocean currents that regulate our weather to storing carbon and buffering our planet against the impacts of climate change, unquote. Bolivia's president has announced plans to exploit a vast natural gas reserve north of Bolivia's administrative capital, La Paz. President Luis Arce said Monday the discovery of 1.7 trillion cubic feet of gas would once again make Bolivia a major exporter of fossil fuels. Intensified wildfires across Oregon, where at least 8 blazes are burning. Oregon's largest blaze, the Cow Valley Fire, has burnt over 132,000 acres. Wildfires are also raging in parts of California and Hawaii. In Gambia, lawmakers have voted to uphold legislation banning female genital mutilation. The vote in Nigeria, at least 22 students were killed after a 2-story school in the community of Busabuji collapsed during morning classes Friday. Over 100 students at the Saints Academy became trapped in the rubble. Many of the school students are 15 or younger. Local officials vowed to investigate as the families of the victims gathered near the school to mourn their loved ones. This is Victor Dennis, whose son, Emmanuel, was killed.
How was that? Joining me now, Florida Congressman Byron Donalds. Congressman, tell me how lawmakers have been briefed thus far on this.
There have been no briefings. I was actually just talking to a couple of my colleagues on the Oversight Committee. There was supposed to be information that came from Secret Service. Apparently, the Department of Homeland Security has now interceded themselves in that Because oversight has full jurisdiction over Secret Service, but obviously the Homeland Committee has jurisdiction over Homeland Security.
Okay, this is all too complicated.
Exactly.
There needs to be one conduit, one committee, special committee to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to say this till I'm blue in the face. Having 4 congressional committees looking into this, Congressman, is a recipe for delay, leaking, backbiting, and disaster. That's my view.
Well, look, I agree with you on that. What we're trying to make sure we get happen is to have the current head of the Secret Service in on committee on Monday. That's the current plan as it exists today. But in terms of the members on that committee, oversight or on Homeland, being briefed on this, that has not occurred at this time.
I know you were sitting next to President Trump last night after he made his first appearance. We were all teared up. I was with a group, Sean Hannity and I and others were sitting. And it was extremely emotional. Tell me about that moment.
Incredible. Nothing I ever saw or ever thought I would ever be a part of. To see the president emerge after what happened on Saturday. I saw him a little bit backstage before he came out. I think the moment was exceptional for our country. Even for Donald Trump, that emotion, I believe, hit him as well. Because we're talking about centimeters, Laura, centimeters. And he could not be with us today. It was a great night. This convention arena was united. Our party is united. And this week, our mission is to unite our country behind.
Super soaker. Torrential rain turns Toronto roads into rivers.
Oh my God.
The rescues, the mess, and the misery. Also on this Tuesday night, pleased to revamp BC's foster care. The trail of mistakes and abuse that led to an Indigenous boy's tragic death. From fierce opponent,
I'm a never Trump guy,
to running mate.
I plan to be a very good vice president for Donald Trump.
How J.D. Vance ended up on Team Trump. And a startling revelation after a poor performance.
And the rockets red glare.
This singer's apology and admission about her well-being.
With its rightful owner. Turns out all it took was an old news article, the power of technology, and most importantly, the kindness of strangers. CTV's Kevin Chirac has the story.
Richard Bernard believes in doing the little things to bring joy, whether it's blowing bubbles in a park or returning a priceless family heirloom to its rightful owner. Bernard stumbled upon this unique piece of jewelry when his good friend's wife recently passed away and they were going through her belongings. That's when the former antique shop owner used Google Lens to get a better idea of what it was.
The first article that comes up is a CTV News article.
The 4.5-year-old article detailed a lost gold necklace featuring 2 bird charms, a bow, and 5 green gems belonging to a woman in Delta.
I was excited. I thought it was kind of cool.
Bernard says his friend found it years ago and gave it to his wife for her birthday. Once he and his friend saw the story, he contacted CTV News.
It's the right thing to do. I think it's the right thing. Everybody should do this. Everybody should, when you find a wallet, when you find a phone, just... the blacksmith's right over here.
I will keep it in a safe space.
He didn't ask for any reward, only that we get the necklace home.
I've got a special delivery.
Oh! We found our woman.
Here you go.
Excuse me. Wow. I'm just so grateful to him.
We explained to her how it all came to be, including Bernard's instinct to use Google Lens.
What a guy. How does he know all this?
She says the necklace was passed down from her mother who came here from England and was devastated when she lost it. But now, pure elation.
Very hopeful.
A major Toronto highway underwater, cars submerged, drivers stranded as torrential rain pounded southern Ontario. Tonight, the intense summer storm that left Canada's biggest city suddenly paralyzed. Oh my God, look, 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 look! Roads and basements flooded, power knocked out, commutes thrown into chaos.
I felt panically because I didn't know how to get out.
Was the city unprepared?
I'm just wondering, was there no weather forecast?
What more Canadian cities need to do in the face of extreme weather? And why did Edmonton police shoot and kill a man who appeared to have his hands up?
Nobody deserves to get gunned down.
His family's grief and demands for answers. And taxpayer-funded prescription pills meant to replace illicit drugs and stem the opioid crisis.
A lot of these people are just taking the drugs out of the bottles and handing them over to somebody else.
We break down why some are ending up on the streets.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault.
Tonight, with the political world swirling, we are live for the Republican National Convention. But first, Senator Bob Menendez convicted today, guilty on all counts in a sprawling corruption trial. Gold bars, envelopes of cash, a Mercedes, what he blamed on his wife, why he says he never violated his oath of office, as former Democratic allies call on him to step aside. Just breaking, Iran and the plot to kill former President Trump uncovered. Why the intelligence led the Secret Service to bulk up his security detail. Plus, the investigation into what went wrong at that rally in Butler. Local police encountering the gunman on the roof and trying to warn the Secret Service. Our new reporting tonight. Inside President Trump's RNC debut, his ear visibly damaged. Tonight calls for party unity with former critic Governor Nikki Haley standing behind him. And the security scare right outside the convention. President Biden back on the road, fresh off our exclusive interview, the new challenge from Democrats to replace him. And finally, Bloom Boom. Why it's a spectacular season for a summer stunner.
This is NBC Nightly.
Tonight, breaking news from Milwaukee, the surprise ad to the Republican convention here. Who will speak tonight in support of Donald Trump? Also, the new video of a phone call between Donald Trump and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Trump asking Kennedy for his support. Trump appearing to agree with Kennedy on childhood vaccines. Also here in Milwaukee, the man shot and killed by an officer not far from the convention site. And in the east tonight, New York City, Philadelphia, we're tracking severe storms and life-threatening heat. First tonight, the video and audio of that phone call between former President Trump and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Trump describing the assassination attempt, asking Kennedy for his endorsement, and appearing to agree with RFK Jr. on vaccines. Trump's VP pick, J.D. Vance, here in the hall, a walkthrough before his big speech. And Nikki Haley on that stage, too, after once calling Trump unelectable. What she'll say tonight. Meantime tonight, what about President Biden? Where do things stand with the nomination? After pressure to get out of the race, the president firing back in a new interview over continued questions about his fitness for office and that debate performance. Biden now asking, where are the fact checks of the repeated lies Trump told during that debate? Tonight, the president in Las Vegas, and after Nancy Pelosi's comments, George Clooney's words, and now Congressman Adam Schiff, is Biden now determined to be the nominee? The scare not far from the convention site here, a man taken down by police, what we've learned. The new turn involving security surrounding Donald Trump tonight. ABC News has learned the Secret Service had all increased protection for Trump before that Pennsylvania rally. Because of intelligence, Iran wants to assassinate Trump. So the question now, how was that young gunman able to get on that roof with increased security over concerns involving Iran? The other breaking headline tonight, New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez found guilty of corruption. The severe storm watches, Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia, New York City, what we're watching. A record day on Wall Street, the Dow reaching a new all-time high. Also tonight, the loud boom heard over New York City. They have now revealed an eye-opening possible cause. And flocking to a famous Las Vegas casino, they now have to give away $1.6 million in cash and prizes before they close.
From ABC.
Tonight, a special edition of the CBS Evening News. Tonight, a special edition of the CBS Evening News from the Republican National Convention here in Milwaukee.
I hereby call this session to order.
What to expect as the GOP tries to rally around unity. What we're learning about when one-time rival Nikki Haley was invited to speak. And the breaking news about an Iranian plot to kill Donald Trump. We now know security was stepped up around the former president even before the assassination attempt over the weekend. How's your family? Plus our interview with the former president's son, Eric Trump.
This is millimeters away from your brain, and I think that puts life into perspective.
The CBS Evening News starts now.
Europe's capital, Brussels, Belgium, from here at European Union summits to NATO meetings strategizing Europe's defense, here on France 24.
Dave Keating, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.
Hello, you're watching Daybreak here on France 24. I'm Haxi Myers-Belkin. These are our headlines today. Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry says that Israeli strikes across the enclave have killed 57 Palestinians on Tuesday, including displaced Gazans who'd been sheltering at a school. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying the army should further increase pressure on Hamas. I'll be crossing to Jerusalem correspondent Jordana Miller in a few moments. Donald Trump's former rivals for the Republican presidential nomination take to the stage at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee for full-throated endorsements of the former US president. That show of unity from Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis offering a stark contrast to the deep divisions emerging in the Democratic Party. And French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal and his government resign, but will nonetheless stay on in a caretaker capacity until a new cabinet can be appointed. That is, MPs prepare to vote this Wednesday for a new president of the National Assembly. Israeli airstrikes continue to fall across central and southern Gaza, including one that struck a school housing displaced Palestinians. Local authorities say that dozens of people were killed and injured across the enclave on Tuesday. Those deaths coming one day after the US State Department said the number of civilian deaths in Gaza remained unacceptable. Israel has said it's targeting Hamas militants hiding among the civilian population. Well, for more, we can cross now to Jerusalem to speak with ABC.
Biden or it's someone else, but they need to make it in the next few weeks.
Ketavan Gojestani, thank you very much. France's centrist Prime Minister Gabriel Attal resigned along with his government on Tuesday following legislative elections that handed victory to a leftist coalition. Attal will, though, stay on in a caretaker capacity until a new cabinet can be appointed. MPs are due this Wednesday to elect a new president of the National Assembly, a decision that many are hoping will in turn galvanise the country's divided leftist coalition to appoint a prime minister.
At other top jobs on Thursday, he said talks would resume on finding a candidate for prime minister.
The Paris Olympics ceremony is now just 9 days away, and the excitement is certainly growing here in the French capital following a jubilant Olympics flame procession through the capital at the start of the week. But that Olympics enthusiasm certainly isn't being shared by everyone. Charities and undocumented migrants have been speaking out after witnessing evictions as squats in northern Paris in particular were cleared out ahead of those games. The spokesperson for the NGO Le Revers de la Médaille, or the other side of the coin in English, said that 12,500 people have been expelled from tent cities and squats in the past year, a 40% rise from the same period 2 years ago. Let's take a listen.
This summer and off the streets in a positive way. Unfortunately, that's not what happened.
That's all we have time for right now here on Daybreak. Stay tuned, more news coming up in 15 minutes' time.
Kenyan police used tear gas to disperse protesters in the capital Nairobi on Tuesday, as nationwide demonstrations have continued into a third week. The ongoing unrest comes despite Kenyan President William Ruto withdrawing a controversial finance bill and dismissing his cabinet in response to protesters' demands.
I just want my voice to be heard, and I just want the president to know that we don't want what he's doing. Like, the economy is just bad, and we don't like it.
The protests were prompted by anger at proposed tax increases and a government that many, mostly young demonstrators feel is not listening to them.
This is our land. We are dying here. We get justice or we die here. And the irreversible minimum is either the president abide by what the people are telling him. We gave him that power. It is time for him to abide by what we are telling him. Oh, we demand IMF to come and carry their own puppet.
The cabinet last Thursday and promised to form a new government that will be lean and efficient. With more than 30 deaths during the unrest, protesters have also called for the president to resign.
Russian Foreign Minister said on Tuesday that Moscow is only ready to move towards a stabilization of the Ukraine conflict if accompanied by concrete steps to remove threats to Russia emanating from the Western Euro-Atlantic direction. Changing the composition of the Security Council must be a key element of reform of the organization, although this alone will not achieve productive work unless there is a basic agreement on modus operandi among the permanent members. This consideration, however, does not cancel the imperative to eliminate geographical and geopolitical imbalances in the Security Council, where today the countries of the collective West are clearly overrepresented. Achieving the broadest possible agreement on the specific parameters of reform to strengthen the representation of Asia, Africa, and Latin America is a long overdue step. He added that in a multipolar world, there should be no monopolies by definition in monetary and financial regulation, trade, and technologies.
China and Russia are conducting joint naval exercises at a military port in southern China. This comes as tensions with the US-led NATO alliance grow. The Joint Sea 2024 exercises began in the city of Changjiang in Guangdong province on Sunday and are expected to last until mid-July. According to the Chinese Defense Ministry, the exercises notably aim to demonstrate the resolve and capabilities of the two sides in addressing maritime security threats and preserving global and regional peace and stability. The drills would include anti-missile exercises, air defense. State broadcaster CCTV reported. The exercises were announced following the end of the NATO summit in Washington. The communiqué, approved by the 32 members of the Western Military Alliance, labeled Beijing a decisive enabler of Russia in the war in Ukraine. Beijing responded that NATO hyping up China's responsibility on the issue had sinister motives.
With the Paris Olympics less than 2 weeks away, doubts remain over the cleanliness of the River Seine. Despite a cleanup project costing Paris €1.4 billion, has tested unsafe for humans in recent weeks with high levels of E. coli.
What we have is what we call combined sewer system, which is a single pipe network carrying both rainwater as well as sewage. And when there's a lot of rain, which apparently is the case these days, pipe networks are overloaded and sewage spills into the nearest water body. And in the case of Paris, that's the Seine River.
To demonstrate that the river is clean enough, conditions may not be the same, however, during the games.
Apparently, they're taking samples at 3 in the morning, and they're going to have a water quality information. But when they get the results, it's going to tell them the water quality 18 hours ago, not at the time the swimmers are going to be in the water. And between the sample and getting the results, there might be some rain, and again, raw sewage spill into the water, and thus they're not going to have real-time water quality data.
Triathlon and marathon swimming are scheduled to take place in the historic water during the Games, July.
It's 2 in Singapore and Hong Kong, 11 in New Delhi and 1 in Jakarta. I'm Ilakia Silveraji. Headlines this hour. Thai police investigating the death of 6 foreigners at a luxury in Bangkok say cyanide poisoning was likely the cause. 10 years after the downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17, families of the victims continue to seek justice and closure. And Donald Trump receives high praise from his former rivals at the Republican National Convention. Both Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis endorse him for president as the party projects a united front.
What started as one of the biggest mega unions in the land looks set to end as a fragmented version of its production, forestry, mining and traded by organised crime and bikie elements, things are about to get a whole lot worse for the construction division. One way or another, the Albanese government will have the union's leadership pushed aside and administrators organised in at least 3 states. Federal police will also take a look at any criminal misconduct too. This will ensure that political debate about industrial lawlessness will resume when Parliament comes back here. But we'll take stock of where things are at today. Coming from the nation's capital, acknowledging traditional custodians around Canberra, I'm Greg Jennett. You're watching Afternoon Briefing. Also on the program today, in a week when all eyes have turned to the United States for obvious reasons, across the Atlantic, the shift in power to a new Labor government in the UK takes shape tonight. The traditional King's Speech will be delivered in Westminster, outlining the priorities of Keir Starmer's new government. UK High Commissioner to Canberra covering transition in power, but also an enlarged presence of UK forces currently training here in Australia. So that's coming up a little later. But first, the CFMEU's associations with criminals has been highlighted in Victoria. But it's astonishing how quickly Labor governments elsewhere have realised they need to act on this too. Images have emerged from New South Wales of that state's CFMEU secretary allegedly
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Woodman. Have a good life.